What if everything you thought you knew about success was wrong? A billionaire, a hidden love story, and a loss that changed everything. In this powerful journey, watch how one woman's quiet strength shattered the walls of a man's empire and showed him the real meaning of success. Stay tuned to discover the secret that could change your life forever. Before we dive into this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our powerful, life-changing content. Billionaire hid their relationship, but her death revealed the secret that made headlines. I was never one for love. That's what I told myself every time I failed at relationships. I threw myself into my work, into the empire I built from nothing, chasing success like a man running from his past. I told myself it was the only thing that mattered. Money, power, influence, all of it, but it wasn't. Her name was Emily. I still remember the first time I met her. She wasn't like the others, not at all. There was something about her quiet strength, her calmness that drew me in. I was used to people wanting something from me, a favor, a deal, an investment, but Emily never asked for anything. She simply listened. She understood me in ways no one ever had. And over time I realized she was the one thing I never knew I needed, but I was afraid. I couldn't let anyone see her, not with me, not in the spotlight, not with the world knowing. People would talk. I had worked too hard to get here, too hard to keep my empire standing. I couldn't afford the distraction, so I hid her, kept our relationship a secret. No one knew, not even my closest friends. We spent nights in silence, in the quiet moments when no one could see us. I held her close, feeling the warmth of her body next to mine, her heartbeat echoing against my chest. She never questioned me. She understood, but deep down, I knew she deserved more. Her eyes, so full of life, sparkled with hope, with dreams. She didn't want to be hidden. She wanted to live, to walk through the world without fear. But I kept her in the shadows, shielding her from a world that could never understand her worth. And then one day, it all changed. The phone call came early in the morning. I never expected it. The news was blunt, sharp, like a knife straight through my heart. Emily was gone. She had passed away in an accident. It felt like time stopped. I couldn't breathe. I remember rushing to the hospital, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, heart pounding, praying that the news wasn't true, that somehow they had made a mistake. But there was no mistake. She was gone, and in that moment, my world shattered. The walls I had built, the empire I had worked so tirelessly to create, felt meaningless. Everything I thought was important, it all crumbled. Nothing mattered without her. But what hit me hardest was the secret I had kept. She had always wanted to be seen. She had always wanted to share her love with the world. But I had kept her hidden, kept her locked away in the quiet corners of my life. And now I had lost her. The funeral was a blur, a storm of grief and disbelief. But as I stood there, holding back my tears, I realized something. The world needed to know about her. The world needed to hear her story, to see the woman who had quietly stood beside me, who had made me a better man, who had taught me that love wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. I promised myself that I would make it right, but the truth came out in a way I never imagined. I didn't plan for it, but as the days passed, the story of Emily's life spread, and with it the secret of our love. It was everywhere, on every headline, every news channel. The billionaire who hid his relationship, the woman behind the man, the secret that no one knew. It became the story of the year. People were stunned. How could someone like me, who had everything, keep such a secret for so long? But the truth was there, spreading across the world like wildfire. Emily's death had revealed everything. The love we shared, the quiet moments, the tenderness, the sacrifice. The world saw a side of me I had hidden away, and it was painful, but it was also freeing. I knew I had to face it. The pain was still raw, but it began to transform me. I could feel myself changing, like a weight had been lifted, a part of me that had been buried for so long. But it wasn't just about me. It was about Emily. I wanted to honor her memory, to make sure that people knew the truth, that she wasn't just the woman behind the billionaire. She was the heart, the soul. The world had to know the truth. And then the unexpected happened. As the news spread, I began to get letters, messages, hundreds of them, from people who had been inspired by Emily's story. story, who had found hope in the way she had loved me, the way she had been my strength. Her death had sparked something in people. It made them believe in love again, in the power of being seen, in the beauty of giving all of yourself to someone, no matter the cost. And slowly, I began to heal. But it wasn't over. Her death, her legacy, it was only the beginning. The world seemed to be changing around me, but the emptiness in my heart never faded. I kept telling myself it was part of the process, part of the healing I needed to go through. But some days it felt like the pain would never end. The letters kept coming. People from all over the world sharing their own stories of love and loss, of finding the strength to overcome what they once thought impossible. They spoke of Emily like she had been their own friend, their own source of inspiration. It was overwhelming, but in a strange way it helped. One letter in particular stood out. It was from a woman who told me how Emily's quiet courage had inspired her to take a risk, to leave a job she hated, and pursue her own dream of becoming an artist. She said she saw something in Emily, a quiet fire, a strength that didn't shout but that burned brighter than any of the wealth and power I had ever achieved. The letter left me speechless. I had always thought my success, my wealth, my empire was what mattered most, but the truth was it was Emily who had made the real difference in the world. She had quietly touched lives, changed them for the better, and she had done it with grace. But now, with her gone, I found myself questioning everything. What was my purpose now? What was I supposed to do with all the power, the wealth, if I didn't have her to share it with? I had spent so much of my life focused on success, on building something that would last. But now, I realized it was the wrong focus. The things that mattered, love, compassion, the way we treat others, those were the things that lasted. I didn't want to keep hiding anymore. I didn't want to keep running from the truth. Emily had loved me despite everything I had hidden. She had seen me for who I really was. And now, I had to honor her by living my truth, by being the man she always believed I could be. But the world wasn't as kind as I hoped. There were people who whispered, who judged, who thought they knew the whole story. I was criticized, questioned, even ridiculed by some. But what hurt more than anything was the thought that Emily's memory might be overshadowed by the gossip, by the noise of the world around me. I couldn't let that happen. I knew I had to make a choice. I could keep fighting for control, for the reputation I had built, or I could let go and become the man Emily saw in me, the man who didn't hide his love, the man who was vulnerable enough to embrace the truth, to share the beautiful story of what she meant to me. So I made a decision. I was going to do something no one expected. I was going to give up control. I was going to share everything, not just the secret of our relationship, but the truth of who I had become because of her. The press, the world, they could judge all they wanted, but I had nothing left to lose. Emily had already shown me what true strength was, what it meant to live with purpose. I reached out to the people who had written to me, the ones who had been touched by Emily's story. I thanked them for their honesty, for sharing their hearts. I began working with them, helping fund their dreams, lifting them up the way Emily had always lifted me. And slowly, it felt like the pieces of my broken heart began to come together. I still felt the ache of her absence, but I knew she was with me in every choice I made, in every life I touched. It wasn't easy. There were days when I questioned everything, wondered if I was truly honoring her the way she deserved. But then I'd remember her smile, her gentle touch, and the way she always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. And with that, I moved forward. The billionaire who had hidden everything was no longer hiding, and in that moment, I realized that Emily's love had transformed me in ways I had never imagined. But my journey was far from over. There was still so much to be done. The world had just begun to hear her story, and I was going to make sure they never forgot it. The weight of responsibility began to settle on me, not just for my empire, but for the legacy Emily had left behind. Her spirit, her quiet strength had become a part of me, and I could feel her urging me forward, reminding me of the work I still had to do. I knew that Emily had always believed in the power of giving. She didn't just give love, she gave hope. She gave people the courage to take risks, to be vulnerable, to live authentically. So I made a promise to her. I would share her wisdom with the world in every way I could. I would build something that wasn't just about wealth. It would be about people. I began organizing projects to help those who needed it the most, people who had dreams but lacked the resources. I didn't just want to be a billionaire anymore. I wanted to be a man who used his resources to change lives. I started reaching out to young entrepreneurs, to artists who needed a platform, to anyone who had a vision but didn't know how to bring it to life. Every investment I made, every partnership partnership I forged was a tribute to Emily, and in return, I began seeing something incredible happen. The people I helped started helping others. It created a ripple effect. One small act of kindness multiplied. People were living their dreams, starting businesses, writing books, opening schools. The impact was undeniable, but even more incredible was the emotional change I saw in myself. I wasn't just building an empire anymore. I was building a legacy of love. The media, of course, was still watching, waiting for me to slip, hoping that my story would somehow fall apart. But I wasn't the same man I used to be. I had nothing to hide. In fact, I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. Emily had changed me. She had made me see the world through a different lens, one of compassion, understanding, and purpose. But even as I tried to make her proud, there were moments of doubt. Some days I felt her absence like a physical ache. I'd sit in my office, look out at the skyline we had once dreamed about together, and I'd wonder what she would have thought of all this. Would she have been proud? I tried to carry on, but it was hard. There were days when I just wanted to hear her voice again, to feel her hand in mine. But then I remembered what she had taught me. Love wasn't about possession. It was about giving freely, without expecting anything in return. And that's what I needed to do to give, to keep giving. Her death had forced me to face everything I had been running from. My insecurities, my fear of vulnerability, my obsession with control. But in her absence, I found the courage to be the man I had always avoided becoming. As the weeks passed, I continued to give, to build, to honor her memory. And slowly, the world began to change. People were no longer focused on my wealth or my success. They were focused on what I was doing with it. They saw a man who had been transformed, who had opened his heart and his life to others. I was becoming the man Emily had always seen in me, and it was beautiful. But just as I was beginning to feel at peace, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. It was from one of Emily's close friends, a woman who had known her long before I ever did. She had been watching from the sidelines, observing the way I had changed, and she had something to share with me. A secret Emily had kept, something I had never known. The letter was long, filled with details I never expected. It spoke of the depth of Emily's love for me, of sacrifices she had made, and of a dream she had always wanted me to fulfill, a dream that at the time I hadn't been able to see. Emily had planned to start a foundation to help those in need, but she had kept it a secret, knowing that if she had revealed it, it would have become about her, about me. Instead, she had quietly put everything in place, ensuring that it would continue after her death. And now, it was my responsibility to make it a reality. The letter ended with a simple request: promise me you'll finish what we started. And just like that, the next chapter of my life began. I had thought I was doing enough, but I had been wrong. There was more work to be done, more people to help, more lives to change, and I knew now that this was my true purpose, to carry on the legacy of love Emily had started, to use my wealth, my influence, to make a difference that would last long after I was gone. Emily had given me a new life, a life filled with meaning, and I was going to honor her, not just by building my empire, but by building a better world for everyone. I couldn't believe how much I had changed in such a short time. The man I once was, the billionaire who hid behind walls of power and control, seemed like someone I no longer recognized. Now, every step I took, every decision I made, felt like it was in honor of Emily. She had ignited something in me I didn't know existed, a fire to do more than just build a fortune, but to build something that would last beyond me. I started the foundation, just as Emily had dreamed. It was a long and painful process, but each piece of the puzzle fell into place. We helped struggling artists, young entrepreneurs, and children from underserved communities who had dreams but no way to chase them. I was making a difference, but in the quiet moments, when I was alone, I felt her absence all over again. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the weight of the world felt too heavy on my shoulders, but I would think about Emily's unwavering faith in me, her belief that love was the ultimate strength, and it pushed me forward. I began to realize that Emily's death, as devastating as it was, had given me the greatest gift of all. She had shown me what it meant to truly live, and it wasn't about success or wealth. It was about love, sacrifice, and creating something greater than yourself. But just when I thought I was finding peace, I received another unexpected letter. This one was from the lawyer who had handled Emily's estate. Inside, I found an envelope with my name on it. It was a will, but not just any will. Emily had written something specifically for me, something I had never known existed. The letter was short, but every word hit me like a punch to the chest. She had written about the life we could have had, the dreams we shared, the moments we never got to experience. She had forgiven me for keeping her hidden, for the choices I made that kept us apart, but she also told me that her greatest regret was not seeing me become the man she knew I could be. And then she told me something that stopped my heart. She had left me her journals, her personal thoughts and dreams, the ones she had never shared with anyone, and she had requested that I finish them, that I bring her words to life. It was as if, in her absence, she was still guiding me. The idea of carrying out her final wish overwhelmed me, but I knew I had to do it, for Emily, for the love she had given me, for the legacy she had left behind. I began to read her journals, and with every page, I found pieces of her I hadn't known before, her hopes, her fears, her deepest desires. She had always been so selfless, always giving to others, and yet she had dreams that she kept to herself, dreams she wanted me to help fulfill. One entry in particular stood out to me. It was a letter she had written to herself about the future she hoped to create, a world where love and kindness were more important than anything else, where people helped each other rise, instead of falling prey to greed and fear. She had wanted me to lead that change. The realization hit me hard. I had spent so many years running from who I really was, from the man she saw in me. Now it was time to stop hiding, time to embrace the responsibility she had always believed I was capable of carrying. With her words guiding me, I took a bold step. I began making larger commitments, not just with money, but with my time, my energy, and my heart. I visited schools, mentored young leaders, invested in causes that promoted sustainability and fairness. But the most important thing I did was open up. I stopped hiding the truth of my love for her. I shared it with the world. I started telling Emily's story, the story of how she had changed my life, how her quiet strength had built the foundation of the person I had become. I wanted people to know her the way I had known her, the woman who had been my rock, who had taught me that love wasn't a weakness, but the most powerful force in the world. And as I began to live more openly, as I started sharing not just my success, but my journey of transformation, I saw the impact it had on others. People came to me with their own stories of love, of loss, of second chances. They told me how Emily's story had inspired them, how they had found the strength to change their own lives. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was a movement, a ripple that had started with one woman, one love, and it was spreading. But even with all the progress, even with the successes, there were still days when I felt the emptiness, when I missed her more than words could ever express. And in those moments, I knew that the journey wasn't over. There was still more to do, more to give. Her love had ignited a fire in me, and I couldn't let it burn out. There were still people out there who needed help. There were still lives to change, still hearts to heal. And so with Emily's love in my heart and her memory guiding my every step, I kept moving forward, not just for me, but for her, for the legacy she had left behind, for the love that would never die. The weight of my responsibility continued to grow, but this time it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a calling, a purpose that I had never fully understood before. Emily had shown me what true strength was, and now it was my turn to show others, to be a beacon of light for those still searching for hope. I knew the foundation was just the beginning, but there was so much more I had to do, so many more lives to touch. I started traveling, speaking at conferences, sharing the story of our love, the story of how one woman, one incredible soul, had changed everything for me. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain of losing her felt like it might swallow me whole. There were moments when I wanted to give up, to retreat into the comfort of my wealth, where everything was safe and predictable. But then I would remember the strength that Emily had shown me, remember the promise I had made to her, and I would push forward. The more I shared our story, the more I saw how people connected with it, how they found something within themselves that they had forgotten, how they remembered the power of love, the power of vulnerability, the power of giving without expecting anything in return. One evening I met a young woman at one of my talks. She came up to me afterward, her eyes filled with tears. She said she had been lost, struggling with the weight of the world on her shoulders. But hearing Emily's story had changed everything for her. It gave her the courage to finally take the first step toward her own dreams. Her words hit me harder than anything ever had. I realized then that Emily's legacy was more than just a foundation, more than just the money and projects we had started. It was about the ripple effect, how one act of kindness, one decision to live with love, could change the course of so many lives. But even as I saw the changes in others, I still struggled to let go of the guilt. I had kept Emily hidden for so long. I had made choices that I knew in my heart were wrong, and as much as I wanted to make up for it, the past still haunted me. I began to realize, though, that healing didn't happen overnight, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is forgiveness. I hadn't just failed Emily, I had failed myself too. But in working to honor her, I was learning how to forgive, learning how to let go of the past and step into the future. The foundation continued to grow, and with it so did I. I began to see the world through a different lens. I began to value things I had once overlooked, the simple moments, the quiet victories, the joy of helping someone in need, and slowly I began to heal. But just when I thought I had finally found my peace, another challenge came. The world was changing, and I had to change with it. I couldn't keep doing things the old way, couldn't keep relying on just wealth and influence. I realized that the true power of Emily's legacy wasn't in what I could buy, but in what I could give, and how much of myself I was willing to share. So I took another bold step. I began to sell off parts of my empire, investing in causes that truly mattered: education, sustainability, mental health. The more I gave, the more I realized that it wasn't the money that changed lives. It was the intention, the love, the purpose behind it. The world needed more than just billionaires writing checks. It needed people who were willing to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, and truly make a difference. So I made a vow to myself and to Emily's memory that I would never stop, that I would continue to give, to build, to grow, not for the sake of my name, but for the sake of the world I wanted to leave behind. And though the pain of losing Emily would never truly disappear, I found peace in knowing that her love had changed me, and through that change I had the power to change the world. I would carry her with me in every step I took. Her love would be my guide, and no matter what came next, I knew that together we had built something beautiful. The world around me seemed to move at a relentless pace, but in the midst of it all, I found myself standing still, rooted in the mission that Emily had ignited. With every new challenge, I reminded myself why I was doing this. It wasn't just for success. It wasn't just for recognition. It was for the people whose lives could be transformed, the ones who would never have had a chance without someone willing to believe in them. The foundation was flourishing, but it wasn't just the impact we were making with grants and donations. It was the real, tangible changes I saw in people's eyes, the hope returning to their lives, the confidence blooming in those who had once felt invisible. I knew then that this was the legacy Emily had dreamed of, not just changing one life, but lifting entire communities. Still, the weight of Emily's absence never fully left me. I would catch myself in quiet moments, standing in the middle of one of our new projects, and feel her loss like a jagged edge in my heart. But it wasn't just sorrow anymore. It was a quiet, determined resolve. I knew that the journey wasn't just mine, it was ours. And then came the unexpected. A letter once again arrived. It was from one of Emily's old colleagues, someone I hadn't heard from since before her passing. The letter contained something I wasn't prepared for, a request, a revelation that shook me to the core. Emily, it turned out, had secretly started an initiative in her own right, a project focused on mental health awareness, something deeply personal to her that no one had known about. She had been working on it quietly, building it piece by piece, preparing to launch it alongside the foundation, but she hadn't been able to finish it. She hadn't been able to see it come to life, and now it was in my hands, her dream. At first I was overwhelmed by the weight of it. I had so many things I was already balancing, so many lives I was trying to touch, but I knew there was no turning back. This wasn't just a project. This was the final piece of Emily's vision, the one thing she had held close to her heart, and I would not fail her now. So I threw myself into it. I worked with the team Emily had built, the people who knew her vision and understood the importance of what we were trying to accomplish. The more I learned, the more I understood the depth of her passion for mental health advocacy. It was something she had never fully opened up about, but it was a part of her that she held in silence. The initiative was about breaking the stigma, about creating a world where people felt safe to speak their truth, no matter the darkness they had faced. Emily had always believed that vulnerability was strength, and she had known that mental health was the key to truly unlocking the potential in people. As I watched the project grow, I felt something shift inside me. It was as if I was finally aligning with the deepest parts of Emily's soul, fulfilling the dream she had for not just me, but for all the people who needed to be seen and heard. But with success came more pressure. There were critics, of course, people who said that I was just trying to repair my image, that the initiative was a distraction from my wealth, that it was all for show. For a moment I felt the sting of their words, but then I remembered why I was doing this. I wasn't here to be perfect. I wasn't here to be a hero. I was here to make a difference. The truth was, it wasn't about me anymore. It never had been. This was about the people whose voices had been silenced for far too long, the ones who had been told to keep their pain hidden. This was about breaking down walls, creating spaces where people could be vulnerable and authentic without fear of judgment or ridicule. And as the initiative flourished, I began to see changes in myself too. I was no longer driven by the desire to hide or protect my empire. I was driven by something far more powerful, the need to love openly, to give without reservation, to show up for others the way Emily had always shown up for me. One evening, as I sat in my office, the same one I had once used to negotiate deals and build wealth, I looked out at the city skyline. It had been a long, tiring journey, but I felt a sense of peace settling in. I had come full circle. I was no longer the man who hid behind his success. I was the man who was learning, growing, loving, and giving. I had finally understood what Emily had been trying to show me all along. Success, power, wealth, those were all fleeting. But love, compassion, and making a difference in someone else's life, those were the things that truly mattered. And just when I thought I had figured it all out, a voice inside me reminded me there was still more to do. Emily had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. She had seen the best in me, even when I was blind to it. And now I was going to continue to live by that same belief. I was going to keep going for her, for the people we had helped, and for the world that still needed love, because the journey, the real journey, was only just beginning. As I stood at the crossroads of my journey, I realized that the road ahead was not one I would walk alone. The lessons I had learned from Emily, the wisdom she had imparted to me in her quiet, steadfast way, were the foundation of everything I had become and everything I would continue to be. Emily's love had transformed me. Her sacrifice, her quiet strength, had opened my eyes to the truth that success, in its truest form, is not measured by wealth or power. It is measured by the lives you touch, the hearts you heal, the kindness you give. I knew then that my purpose was not to simply exist within the world, but to change it, to leave behind a legacy that wasn't defined by buildings or figures on a balance sheet, but by the stories of people who had found hope, found strength, found courage, because of the work we had done together. Emily's death had shaken me to my core, but it had also birthed a new version of myself, one who was brave enough to face vulnerability, to confront failure, to build something beautiful in her honor. And in doing so, I had come to realize that the greatest gift we can give to the world is not our successes, but our willingness to love without boundaries, to give without hesitation, and to serve others without expecting anything in return. I had lived in fear for so long, fear of being exposed, fear of losing control, fear of opening my heart to the one person who could shatter the walls I had so carefully built. But in the end, it was love that healed me, and love that would continue to guide me. As I reflect on this journey, the pain, the loss, and the beauty of growth, I understand now more than ever that true success is not found in what we accumulate, but in what we give away. It is in the lives we touch, the hearts we open, and the kindness we share with others. The moral of the story is simple. Don't be afraid to love. Don't hide your truth for fear of judgment. Don't let fear keep you from becoming the person you were always meant to be. Because in the end, love is the only thing that truly matters. The love you give, the love you receive, and the love that lives on through your actions. That is the legacy we leave behind. And that, my friends, is the greatest success of all. This story, this journey, has shown me that our true purpose is not to conquer the world, but to lift others up, to walk alongside them, and to share the kind of love that changes everything. May we all learn from Emily's example and from the way she lived, the way she loved. May we too find the courage to open our hearts, to be vulnerable, to give, and to love without limits. The story continues, but now it is our turn to write the next chapter. We'd love to hear from you. What did you think of this story? Did it inspire you? Leave your thoughts and feedback in the comments below. Your voice matters.